Imagine ruling one of the most powerful empires in human history for over 20 years. You build monuments that touch the sky, command armies, expand trade routes across continents, and bring unprecedented wealth to your kingdom. Now imagine that 20 years after your death, someone systematically destroys every statue of you. They chisel your name off every monument. They rewrite the king lists as if you never existed. This isn't fiction. This happened to one of ancient Egypt's most successful rulers, and for over 3,000 years it worked. Her name was nearly lost to history forever. But here's what makes this even darker. The person who likely ordered this erasure wasn't a rival or an enemy. It was probably her own stepson. Her name was Hatshepsut, and she was born around 1507 BCE into the royal family during Egypt's 18th dynasty, what historians call the New Kingdom, Egypt's Golden Age. Her father was Thutmose I, a warrior pharaoh who expanded Egypt's borders and commanded respect across the known world. But here's the problem. Hatshepsut was a daughter, not a son, and in ancient Egypt, women didn't become pharaohs. Sure, there had been female rulers before, but they were always regents, temporary placeholders until a male heir came of age. The role of pharaoh wasn't just political, it was divine. The pharaoh was the living embodiment of Horus, the son of Osiris, a god-king who maintained Ma'at, the cosmic order that kept chaos at bay. And that role, according to Egyptian theology, required a man. But Hatshepsut wasn't raised to be just another royal wife. Her father recognized something in her. Egyptian records suggest he may have even designated her as his successor when male heirs were scarce, an almost unprecedented move. She received an education reserved for future rulers, reading and writing hieroglyphics, religious texts, military strategy, diplomacy, administration. Then her father died. Her half-brother, Thutmose II, became pharaoh, and in true royal Egyptian fashion, designed to keep the bloodline pure, Hatshepsut married him. She became queen. This wasn't unusual. Royal incest was standard practice to maintain divine blood. But Thutmose II was weak. Historical records and his mummy suggest he was sickly, possibly suffering from a severe skin condition. His reign lasted only 3, maybe 4 years, and when he died, Egypt faced a succession crisis. The heir to the throne was Thutmose III, a young boy from a minor wife, not from Hatshepsut's royal bloodline. He was barely old enough to understand the concept of ruling an empire, let alone actually do it. So Hatshepsut did what royal women had done before. She became regent, the power behind the throne, ruling in the child pharaoh's name until he came of age. Except she had no intention of ever stepping aside. And what she did next changed Egyptian history forever. Around the 7th year of her regency, something extraordinary happened. Hatshepsut declared herself pharaoh, not queen, not regent, pharaoh, king of Upper and Lower Egypt. This was unthinkable. The problem was theological as much as political. The Egyptian word for ruler, pharaoh, was grammatically masculine. The religious rituals required the pharaoh to perform certain rites as the son of Ra, the sun god. How could a woman be a son? Hatshepsut's solution was brilliant and deeply strange. She didn't try to rule as a woman, she ruled as a man. In her statues and reliefs, she's depicted wearing the traditional false beard of the pharaoh, the Nemes headdress, and the Shendit kilt. Her inscriptions referred to her using masculine pronouns and titles. She was His Majesty and the Son of Ra. But here's where it gets fascinating. She didn't completely erase her femininity. In some inscriptions, the hieroglyphs would switch between masculine and feminine forms in the same sentence.
She was creating a new category, a female king, something that didn't exist in the Egyptian conceptual framework. To legitimize her rule, she commissioned elaborate propaganda. At her magnificent mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, she had artists create a divine birth narrative. According to these reliefs, her mother was visited by the god Amun himself, who took the form of her father, Thutmose I. The message was clear. Hatshepsut wasn't just royally legitimate, she was divinely ordained. She also emphasized her father's wishes, claiming Thutmose I had publicly declared her his successor before his death. Whether this was true or strategic revisionism, we'll never know, but it was effective.
And then she got to work. While Thutmose III remained alive, trained in military affairs but politically sidelined, Hatshepsut ruled Egypt for approximately 22 years, and by all accounts, she was exceptional at it. She didn't focus on military conquest like the pharaohs before her. Instead, she turned Egypt into an economic powerhouse. Her most famous achievement was the trading expedition to the land of Punt, a mysterious region probably located in modern-day Somalia or Eritrea. The expedition brought back incredible wealth: gold, ebony, ivory, exotic animals, and most importantly, myrrh trees, which were transplanted to Egypt for incense production. The reliefs depicting this journey show everything in meticulous detail, like an ancient documentary, demonstrating the prosperity Hatshepsut brought to Egypt. She commissioned hundreds of building projects. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari remains one of the most stunning architectural achievements in Egyptian history, carved directly into limestone cliffs with colonnaded terraces that seem to merge with the rock itself. She erected obelisks at Karnak that dwarfed all previous monuments. One of them, now fallen, was nearly 100 feet tall and weighed over 300 tons. The inscriptions on them read, "Now my heart turns this way and that, as I think what the people will say, those who see my monuments in years to come, and who shall speak of what I have done." She wanted to be remembered forever. Instead, someone tried to erase her completely. Around 1457 BCE, Hatshepsut disappeared from the historical record. The exact circumstances of her death remain unclear. Some evidence suggests natural causes. She was probably in her 50s, a respectable age for the time. Her mummy, possibly identified in 2007, showed signs of diabetes and cancer. When she died, Thutmose III, now in his 30s, finally became sole ruler of Egypt, and he became one of the greatest military pharaohs in Egyptian history, launching campaign after campaign, expanding the empire to its greatest territorial extent. For about 20 years, everything seemed fine. Hatshepsut's monument stood intact. Her name remained inscribed on temples and obelisks. Her images gazed out from walls across Thebes. And then the destruction began. Systematically, methodically, someone ordered the obliteration of Hatshepsut's memory. Her statues were smashed and buried in pits. Her cartouches, the oval rings containing her name in hieroglyphs, were chiseled off monuments and replaced with those of Thutmose I, Thutmose II, or Thutmose III. Her image was hacked away from temple walls. This wasn't random vandalism. This was damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, a calculated campaign to erase someone from history itself. In ancient Egyptian belief, your name was your immortality. To speak someone's name was to keep them alive in the afterlife. To destroy someone's name was to kill them eternally, to condemn their soul to non-existence in the realm of the dead. Someone was trying to murder Hatshepsut's soul.
The obvious suspect is Thutmose III. The timing matches, the motive is clear. He spent his entire adult life in her shadow, denied the throne that was rightfully his by birth. Maybe this was revenge. Maybe it was rage finally unleashed after decades of humiliation. But here's where the story gets complicated. The erasure didn't happen immediately after Hatshepsut's death. It happened around year 42 of Thutmose III's reign, roughly 2 decades later. If this was personal revenge, why did he wait so long? Why did he allow her monuments to stand for 20 years while he built his own military legacy? Some historians suggest the erasure wasn't about personal hatred at all. It was about protecting the legitimacy of the royal succession. Hatshepsut's reign was an anomaly, a disruption in Ma'at, the divine order. By erasing her, Thutmose III wasn't attacking a hated stepmother. He was restoring cosmic balance, ensuring that future generations would see an unbroken line of male pharaohs from Thutmose I to Thutmose II to Thutmose III, with no awkward female interruption. Other evidence points to Thutmose III's own son and successor, Amenhotep II, who may have ordered the erasure to strengthen his own claim to the throne by eliminating any suggestion that women could rule Egypt. The truth is, we may never know for certain. What we do know is that the erasure was terrifyingly effective. For over 3,000 years, Hatshepsut was nearly forgotten. Egyptian king lists from later periods simply skipped over her reign, as if those 22 years never existed. When ancient historians like Manetho compiled their chronicles, they mentioned her only briefly or not at all. The woman who built some of Egypt's greatest monuments, who expanded trade networks across the ancient world, who ruled longer than almost any other female leader in ancient history, was reduced to a footnote, a whisper, a name scratched out of existence. Until the 19th century, when archaeologists began to piece together the truth.
In 1822, Jean-François Champollion cracked the code of hieroglyphics, and suddenly the stones of Egypt could speak again. As archaeologists excavated Deir el-Bahari in the late 1800s, they found something strange, a magnificent temple with inscriptions that didn't quite make sense, royal names that seemed deliberately altered, images of a pharaoh that had been attacked with systematic violence. They had found Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. In the early 1900s, archaeologist Howard Carter, who would later discover King Tut's tomb, was excavating near the Valley of the Kings when he found a pit filled with broken statuary. Inside were dozens of smashed statues, all of the same person, a pharaoh wearing the traditional false beard and royal regalia, but with distinctly feminine features. Piece by piece, archaeologists reconstructed Hatshepsut's story from the fragments. They found her names on obelisks where the erasure had been incomplete. They discovered reliefs where her image had been covered rather than destroyed, preserving the original underneath. They translated inscriptions that spoke of her achievements, her divine birth, her expeditions to Punt. The woman they tried to erase came back. In 2007, Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass announced a stunning discovery. Using DNA analysis and CT scans, his team may have identified Hatshepsut's actual mummy. It had been sitting in the Egyptian Museum for over a century, labeled simply as an unknown royal woman. The mummy showed a woman who died in her 50s, overweight, possibly diabetic, with evidence of bone cancer and abscessed teeth. The analysis revealed she likely died from sepsis caused by a carcinogenic skin lotion she used for a chronic skin condition, possibly inherited from her father. Even in death, she remained hidden in plain sight.
Today, Hatshepsut fascinates historians and the public alike. Was she a feminist icon who shattered gender barriers millennia before the modern women's rights movement? Or was she simply an ambitious politician who seized power when the opportunity arose? Was she a peaceful ruler who preferred trade to warfare, a refreshing change from the militaristic pharaohs who surrounded her? Or was the emphasis on peace simply propaganda to justify why a woman occupied a traditionally martial role? Was Thutmose III a bitter stepson who waited decades to exact revenge? Or a pragmatic ruler who reluctantly erased her to preserve political stability? The truth, as always, is probably more complex than any single narrative can capture. What we can say with certainty is this: Hatshepsut ruled Egypt successfully for over 20 decades during one of its most prosperous periods. She commissioned architectural marvels that still stand today. She expanded Egypt's wealth and influence without the massive military campaigns that defined most pharaohs. And despite the best efforts of whoever tried to erase her, her name survived. Her statues, reassembled from pieces, stand in museums around the world. Her temple still rises from the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, visited by thousands every year. The erasure failed. There's something deeply human about Hatshepsut's story: the desire to be remembered, the fear of being forgotten, the understanding that death isn't the end if your name lives on. She knew this. That's why her inscriptions speak directly across millennia. Now my heart turns this way and that, as I think what the people will say. Someone tried to answer that question by silencing everyone, by destroying her name, her image, her memory, by condemning her to eternal oblivion in both this world and the next. But history has a way of resisting erasure. The stones remember, the fragments speak. The truth, even when buried for 3,000 years, eventually surfaces. Hatshepsut ruled Egypt as a king at a time that should have been impossible. She didn't just survive in a man's world, she thrived, building an empire of prosperity and architectural wonder. They tried to erase her name, but we still speak it. And as long as we do, she remains immortal. Hatshepsut, the foremost of noble ladies, king of Upper and Lower Egypt. She who cannot be forgotten. If this story fascinated you as much as it did me, you're in the right place. Here at DarkPast, we uncover the forgotten, the erased, and the deliberately hidden chapters of human history. We've got more stories like this, stories of people and events that powerful forces tried to bury forever. Because sometimes the most important history is the history someone wanted to destroy. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And if you really want to support what we do here, smash that like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people who love this kind of content. What other erased figures from history should we cover next? Drop your suggestions in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know.